Landlords in Rochester, New York have won a small victory as the recent vote for the good cause eviction law has failed. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have good news for landlords up in Rochester, New York. The good cause eviction law that they were trying to pass within the city has failed the city council vote. Now, I'm not optimistic that this won't pop up again. At least, for now, though, you are doing much better than you were before. Now, these good cause eviction laws, if I haven't already said before, they basically are a permanent implementation of these eviction moratoriums. So it is absolutely ridiculous just how many protections they provide the tenants. And they kind of, in some cases, put in place a rent control policy on top of that. So yeah, these things are absolutely awful. Now, the one up in Rochester, New York, it looks like it lost the vote by three votes for it and 6 votes against it. So it looks like the majority of the city council was against it. And I'm glad that they at least listened to the opposing viewpoint and listened to the landlords. Okay, this thing is not good for property owners. It's not good for tenants either, okay? It's going to cause a shortage of housing, even make housing harder to find. It's going to make housing less affordable. And that's why it's bad for tenants as well. So, it's an absolutely terrible thing, and I don't want to see it passed anywhere else. So, yeah, it's good that they were able to successfully fight against it up in Rochester, New York. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Are you surprised that a city up in New York State has actually rejected this? I mean, I am kind of surprised. I know that Rochester isn't New York City, but it's still a relatively large city and, has a relatively left-leaning population in a very left-leaning state. And my expectation was that, hey, they're going to start mounting more and more anti-landlord laws on top of, the landlords up there. And eventually it's going to get to the point where we just had this extreme socialist system. Well, looks like they're fighting back against that, and it's working, at least for now, okay? So, this article is coming from WXXInews.org, and it says, good cause eviction legislation voted down by Rochester City Council. Voted down, okay? I want to see that every time I read about this good cause nonsense, but let's get into the article and see what it says. Rochester City Council members voted down legislation Tuesday night that would have enacted new restrictions on evictions in the city by a vote of 3-6. Prior to Tuesday's vote, landlords publicly criticized the proposed eviction reduction law, while tenants and tenant advocacy groups rallied in favor of it. Each contingent had dozens of speakers at the meeting. The legislation also sparked lengthy debate among council members prior to the vote. Council Vice President Mary Lupien, one of the measure's supporters, likened the proposed law to supporting workers' rights or ending slavery in the face of opposition. Well, listen to this extremist. Ending slavery? Really? So, somebody not being able to be evicted from a property is equivalent to ending slavery? Give me a break, okay? This is an extreme stretch of the imagination to even come close to that kind of ridiculous comparison. That is so stupid, okay? And I'm glad that nobody listened to that, because it makes everyone look dumb by making such idiotic comparisons. But I'm not surprised that there were a lot of tenant advocacy groups up there, but what I'm glad to hear about is that landlords and people who support property rights showed out to let the city council know that they don't approve of this, that they don't want this sort of thing happening in their city. That's what we have to do. We have to go down to these city council meetings and let them know, hey, there's more than one side to the story. Okay, that's all I'm at. I ask the landlords, step up and let our representatives know, hey, the reason that we are raising prices and the reason that things are happening is because of XYZ. It's not because we are bad people. It is because we're operating businesses, and that is what we have to do in order to stay in business. But let's keep going. The consequences to our people, to our residents, have existed for some time, Lupin said. We cannot be afraid to do what is right. In times past, councils would have proposed something innovative, and their detractors would present uncertainty. They would have said that about slavery. What about the economic unintended consequences? There she goes with this slavery crap again. The eviction reduction law, which was also sponsored by council members Kim Smith and Stanley Martin, would have prohibited landlords without certificates of occupancy for the properties they own from evicting tenants. But the legislation contained a caveat on that prohibition. It would have allowed landlords to evict or to begin eviction cases if they could have proven they were making a good faith effort to get a C of O. Lupin previously gave the example of a tenant refusing the landlord access to the property as an example of the need for the provision. The legislation also specified that tenants could be evicted for damaging property, turning the premises into a public nuisance, using the premises for illegal purposes, or violating at least one significant lease term. Landlords would also have been able to pursue evictions of tenants for other legal or health reasons, or when tenants repeatedly refused their attempts to make repairs. So yeah, a very limited number of reasons that you could actually evict a tenant from the property, okay? And one of the reasons, and I don't know if they mentioned that here, would be, hey, I want to get completely out of the rental business and I don't want to rent this out anymore, okay? Now, I didn't read that here anywhere in the article. Maybe that's one of the exceptions, but I know plenty of people who just want to say, hey, I want to get out of the rental business. I want to sell this property and be done with it. And they're telling landlords, hey, you can't do that. Or if a landlord's like, hey, I want to personally move myself or a family member into the property. Well, you can't do that either. You know, you have to understand that there are a multitude of good reasons why you want to evict. Sometimes you and the tenant, your personalities just clash. Maybe the tenant didn't do anything, wrong, but maybe they're just nagging you to death, constantly calling about every little tiny thing, and you just don't want to deal with that anymore. Okay? There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to just not renew that person's lease. That person shouldn't be able to just move on, and you get another tenant in there who doesn't bother you like that. But this law would make it so you can't do that anymore. I mean, like I said, there's so many good reasons, and it just completely takes away the landlord's property rights. And fortunately, it did not pass, okay? But let me skip over a couple of paragraphs here because there's some important information about it down here. And it says, in a last-ditch effort to revise the bill, Smith brought forward a motion to table the legislation until April so that council had more time to evaluate, discuss, and consider it. The motion failed 3-6 with Martin and Lupin backing Smith. So yeah, they tried to push it out. They're trying to drag this thing out, and the other council members like, no, we don't even want this. So there's no need for any more discussion. It is even more saddening that there has not been a counter proposal presented by anyone on council who has a problem with this bill as it stands, Martin said. You have the opportunity to do the right thing, and judging by the vote that came just before this moment, you will choose to do the wrong thing. So yeah, they're trying to play on people's emotions and say, hey, you have the opportunity to do the right thing. Well, maybe the right thing is to leave people's property rights in place, okay? And to me, it seems like this is a battle of ideology, where these people, they believe that, hey, no matter what happens to the landlord, no matter how awful it is to the property owner, they just have to put up with it and put up with these bad tenants because the tenant is always right. Well, that is a stupid way to look at things, and they don't understand, the business decisions that are necessary in order to have a profitable business where you're renting out properties. Okay, that's why I'm glad that the majority of the council, at least, was willing to listen to the opinions of the landlords and, make a wise decision based upon that. Now, there's already plenty of eviction protections up in the state of New York for tenants. They don't need this sort of thing. Okay, landlords aren't out there willy-nilly evicting people in the grand majority of cases. In the few cases where they are and breaking the law doing it, then they can go after them because there's already laws in place for that. So it's ridiculous to me that they would try to throw something up here that would prevent all landlords. And see, that's the other thing I have. They always want to punish everyone for the actions of a few bad apples, okay? And that's what these eviction protections do, okay? You got a few bad apples, and they're like, oh, well, this might prevent, discrimination against tenants. And I'm like, well, 99.9% of landlords aren't discriminating against tenants based on, race or sex or whatever, right? 99.9% of landlords are doing things right. And the one who is, go after that one guy. Don't come after me and then force me to, keep bad tenants in my property because of that one guy over there who's doing the wrong thing. Okay? So, yeah, good news for landlords up in Rochester. I'm glad to hear it. Hopefully they don't pass any more of these laws up in New York State.